And on the wrap tonight, the terror threat level in the United States raised for the first time in 4 years. We'll tell you why and what it means. The Justice Department now getting ready to investigate the constitutionality of police practices in Baltimore. What will they find? And across the pond, now that David Cameron will keep his post as UK Prime Minister, what's next for political advisor Jim Messina? And will Hillary win next year's Iowa caucus? We've got the numbers, plus potluck, yay or nay. This is the Daily Wrap, live from the Big Apple. And welcome to the show, everybody. I'm Joe Concha, joined by America's pundit and the inspiration for The Good Wife. Is that true?
I love that show. I hope so.
Wow. Not exactly a good wife from what I've seen. And to her right, he's a former Navy SEAL, FBI specialist, and president of Continued Services. Jonathan Gilliam joins us. And finally, she is a small business guru and a best-selling author, Susan Solovic. Welcome back to the show. Appreciate it. We got a busy night tonight. Lots happening. Let's get right to the Daily Download. And there's new fallout from Sunday's attempted terror attack on a Prophet Muhammad art contest in Texas. The head of the Northern Command has raised the alert level at all U.S. military installations from A to B. Now, remember, there are 4 levels, with D being the highest, so we're now a Bravo. A U.S. official, speaking on the condition of anonymity, tells Reuters that the government had some specific information that the Texas gunman might inspire others to carry out an attack. CNN now reporting concerns that were raised when a known jihadist connected to one of the Texas gunmen tweeted out the name and address of a top U.S. military official in charge of training in Syria. This is the first time the threat level has been raised since the 10th anniversary of the 9/11 attacks. The increased security alert comes as the FBI director warns that there could be thousands of people inside the U.S. who are closely following ISIS online. James Comey says, and we quote, "The siren song sits in the pockets on the mobile phones of the people who are followers on Twitter. It's almost as if there's a devil sitting on the shoulder saying kill, 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 kill all day long." Comey and Homeland Security Secretary Jay Johnson discussed the growing threat with the nation's police departments today through a secure video conference. Congress is also looking into the online terror recruitment efforts by ISIS. Experts telling the Senate Homeland Security Committee that the U.S. needs to step up its social media game.
Given that media and the battle of perception is so central to what the Islamic State is trying to do, the U.S. government has to be more quick to react and to understand the strength of its messaging and to be able to respond at the same kind of speed, focusing in on the key message of the Islamic State at the same speed at which they can push out their own message.
Now, New Jersey Senator Cory Booker sits on that committee. He's one of the most active politicians when it comes to social media, and he says it shouldn't be too hard for the U.S. to compete with ISIS.
There are easy tactics. I know them, as you said, from politics, how to get more voice and virality to messaging that we're not using as a government to get counter messages.
And while U.S. officials look at security in cyberspace at home, the military is now training Syrians to take on ISIS on its home turf.
These trainees are recruited, they're vetted, and only then are they put into training. So they've been in the program for quite a while. And then the training takes some time, and then they would be inserted into operations.
The U.S. plans to train and arm a force that's expected to eventually top more than 15,000 troops. Some critics in Congress say the president's ISIS strategy is too limited to make a difference. Others say it's too broad. A small group of lawmakers is pushing to vote authorizing the military's use of force against ISIS. How significant is it that every U.S. military base has raised its threat level? Jonathan Gilliam, I have to go to you first.
Well, I just want to point something out, and I don't want people to take away from this that I'm some kind of jerk who walks around judging people, but when you look at the 3 people that you just showed talking national security and what we should be doing to defend ourselves, I mean, look, you need this. You need an operator. You need somebody who, when you look at them, you know that they're in the fight. Somebody who speaks the language of an operator. That's the problem. We have politicians running a war that they don't know how to come up with a correct war plan. I mean, you can train 15 or 20,000 people to go over and fight in Syria. It's not going to do anything to stop the fundamental Islamic movement. That's what we're at war with. And I do have an issue with the Defense Department raising this level and telling everybody about it. Why do they need to tell everybody about this? Because now, if I'm a bad guy, I'm going to say, well, I was going to attack the base, but now they've heightened their security, so I'm just going to go shoot up the Arby's that's right outside the gate.
Well, do they want to raise the level because of vigilance by citizens that could possibly tip off local authorities on a local threat?
Well, I'm not saying they shouldn't raise it.
I don't know.
I'm not saying they shouldn't raise it and raise the awareness. That's force protection. But why does the DOD feel the need to announce everything that they do? They dropped 3 bombs over in Syria. They announced that they dropped 3 bombs. It just doesn't make any sense to me.
So you see a political aspect to this, like, see, we're doing something, not so much to help secure our U.S. military
I think we were
bases.
talking about this yesterday. When politics are involved, a lot of the times it just doesn't make sense to you and I. When we look at this, it doesn't make any sense.
But aren't politicians mouthpieces for the military? In other words, they're going on what military advisors are telling them, and then they're relaying it on during these hearings?
Well,
I'm asking you that.
During the Clinton era, I mean, politics have always been at the top brass of the military, but the reality is now, for a long time during the Clinton era, warfighters got out of the military. When Bush came in office, the majority of those people that were politicians got lifted to the top, and now we have an excess of politicians at the top of the military, and they just absolutely do not know how. It's strange to hear this, but they don't know how to come up with a strategic war plan. Heather.
Well, you talked about the politics of it all. We see that with the authorized use of military force. We have right now what the president is doing with ISIS is based on the 2001 authorization that Bush received after 9/11. And the idea that neither Democrats nor Republicans really want to push for a new authorization because they can't agree on anything, and it's all about politics. It's all about whether or not the people who are voting for them are going to agree with what they say. So then rather than give him a new authorization, they're just going to continue along status quo, fighting a different enemy that should be fought in different ways with something that applied back in 2001, which is so long ago, and things have changed so much, and yet it won't change simply because of politics.
Susan?
I think politics is a part of it, but I also think there's something else going on here, and they are so technologically savvy. They're just dancing around us, laughing at us because we aren't looking at how sophisticated they are, how amazing they are at getting their messages out there, recruiting these young people. And if you look at the psychology of the people they're recruiting, they're looking for people who want a certain standard, a lifestyle, black and white, something bigger than they, to be bigger, a vision. A lot of these people may have lost hope in their existing lives. They're looking for something to give them value. And that's a very scary place to be. One expert predicts that we're going to see at least 10 incidents in the next few years right here on our own soil. And I think probably that's just the tip of the iceberg.
It's the speed of recruitment that really should be disconcerting for everybody. Because what we used to have was a courier would be handed a videotape, like with Daniel Pearl, the Wall Street Journal reporter. And when he was executed, they actually, not even the tape, they delivered a camera to a hotel lobby in Pakistan and handed it to a U.S. ambassador who was over there. And says, the courier handed it off, signed for this, great, and that's how they learned of it.
Yeah.
That's such a process. It took days for that to happen, and sometimes if Al Qaeda wanted to get their message out, it would take weeks, courier to courier, eventually to maybe Al Jazeera, and maybe they'll play a snippet of a tape of a message of Bin Laden. Now they can send out hundreds, thousands of messages a day for free, anonymously to anybody in the world, and that's how they recruit. I don't know how. I know you try, but that's going to be very difficult to stop.
But you know what, Joe, so can we. And that's the problem. When you saw Cory Booker, if you watched more of that Homeland Security meeting, Senator Ron Johnson spoke as well, and he said, we invented the internet, whether you believe that that's true or not. We invented social media.
We all know who invented the internet.
Al Gore, of course.
Steve Jobs.
But tweeting and doing social media stuff is not going to win this war. We have to have an overall strategic war plan. We just simply do not have.
What would
But
you
we
do,
do-
John?
I would.
Sorry, I know not to call you John, so I caught myself.
First off, I would stop concentrating so much on the Sunni and Shia break. I would just start concentrating on the overall Islamic movement. I mean, there's a lot more to it, but we have to have a plan to push that back.
Sure. So a combination, but mostly military would be
absolutely.
an option. Yep. In the end, that will be the only difference. So coming up next, the Justice Department is going to investigate Baltimore's police practices. Were they acting unconstitutionally in the death of Freddie Gray? Stay right there. We'll be right back here on the Daily Wrap.